Alrighty, we're no longer in the 2010s, so we're going to be looking back on the entire decade as a whole, and we're just going to talk about my 10 favorite movies of the decade. Now, let me be real. This was probably the hardest list I've ever had to make because there are so many movies that I think are deserving of being on this list. For this video, I'm not going to do any honorable mentions because I could be here all day talking about honorable mentions, but I don't want to take up more time than I need to, so we'll just talk about the 10 that I've selected. And just like the top 10 of the year and the bottom 10 of the year, first off, I obviously didn't get to see every movie that came out this decade. And second off, this is just my opinion. These are the ones that I love watching the most. A lot of it is determined by rewatch value. So these are the ones that have just hit me the most this decade. Alrighty, got that out of the way. Let's dive into the top 10 list, starting with
number 10.
In the future, this spot might have other movies come in and out, but as of right now, this is what I have at number 10, 1917. Yeah, this is truly one of the best movies I've seen this decade. And honestly, it was kind of difficult to put this in my top 10 because I literally have only watched this once, and I watched it less than a month ago, so it's still kind of fresh on my mind. I haven't had a whole lot of time to just let it marinate in my mind. But when I'm thinking back on the movies that have hit me the most, that have been truly remarkable in every sense of the word, there's no way I couldn't include 1917 on this list. As I've mentioned before, it is so immersive, it packs a huge emotional punch, and is just truly one of the most cinematic experiences you could ever really have. And again, I know I've said this before, but when this comes out January 10th, please seek this out, please go watch it. It is truly such an incredible experience.
Number 9.
This is one of the two movies on this list that I've probably watched the most on this list. And this is just one of the most fun movies I've ever watched. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is just truly a blast. I mean, this is just what having a good time in the movies is about. It's so much fun. The characters are likable. The action is super fun. It's hilarious all the way through. I mean, what more could you ask from it? It's such a fast-paced movie. The editing is so well done. It never gets boring, and the cast is just truly incredible. You have Michael Cera, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Chris Evans, Brandon Routh, Anna Kendrick. I mean, how could you not love this movie? Edgar Wright is one of my favorite writer and directors in the whole film industry right now, so I promise you, this isn't the last movie you'll see of his on this list.
Number 8.
I know this is one that not a whole lot of people have seen before, but the more that I think about this movie, the more that I let this sit in my head, the more I just absolutely fall in love with Inside Llewyn Davis. The Coen brothers are some of my favorite directors in Hollywood of all time, and honestly, this is probably one of their best movies. This is such a personal, emotional story, and I just found myself so often relating to Llewyn Davis in this movie. I mean, he's just a guy who's passionate about what he loves and is trying to find a way to do what he wants to do for a living, but is having trouble doing that. And I think that's something that everybody can resonate with on some level.
Number 7.
You know, I had to put Scorsese somewhere on this list, but it's probably not the one that you're expecting. Silence. I had to make this list. Silence is so freaking good. I think this is one of Scorsese's most overlooked movies. When you're really looking back on like his films that have made an impact, you have like Taxi Driver, you have Goodfellas, you have like Wolf of Wall Street as of recent. But I think this one packs the biggest emotional punch of all of his movies that I've seen. It's a movie about standing up to adversity and not backing down from what you believe in, which no matter what you believe, whether you agree with what the people in this movie believe with or not, it's a movie that everybody needs to watch to remind yourself to not back down from what you believe in, to stand up for what you think is right.
Number 6.
If you know me even a little bit, you know La La Land had to be on my list. There's no way I could have left this off. This is the other one that I've probably watched the most on this list, but it's so good. It is so good. And I mean, what more can I say about this movie that hasn't already been said? The performances are great, the music is awesome, the cinematography and the editing are just beautiful. It's just a really beautiful story, a really emotional one, and it's also really entertaining in the process. I think it's just one of the most real depictions of love in recent years, and in probably any movie in general.
Number 5.
Alrighty, I'm gonna let my inner comic book nerd spill out for a second. Logan is seriously one of my favorite movies of the decade. Wolverine is one of my favorite superheroes of all time, and I think this is the most honest depiction of Wolverine that we've ever gotten. I love the Western feel of this movie. It really just adds so much to the story, to the characters. And on top of that, as a Wolverine fan, this is about everything that I've been wanting from a movie like this. So yeah, of course I had to put Logan on this list.
Number 4.
Look, if you don't put Inception on your top 10 of the decade list, I'm sorry, you're just plain wrong. I know people have raved about this movie for 10 years now, but I don't care. I freaking love this movie. It's so much fun. It's such a well-crafted story. At first glance, there's no reason why this should work, but Christopher Nolan makes it work, makes a really emotional, immersive experience out of this story, and it turns out to be one of the most awesome movies I've ever seen.
Number 3.
This is one of my favorite scripts of all time. Social Network, yeah, this is an incredible movie. First off, whoever's idea it was to have David Fincher direct an Aaron Sorkin script, props to you. That is one of the best decisions you could have ever made when making a movie. The style of those two creators, I think, just mesh so well together, and I think this is perfect proof of that. You have really well-crafted characters, you have an amazing story, you have awesome cinematography and editing. It's just one of those movies that you can't help but love when you watch it. And even though, yeah, Mark Zuckerberg in this movie is not a great guy, you can't help but be immersed in this story, especially with the performances. Jesse Eisenberg and Andrew Garfield especially, they just blow it out of the park with this. It's so good.
Number 2.
I would honestly and genuinely say this is one of the most fun movies I've ever watched. And it's one that not a lot of people have seen, but The World's End, I think, is one of the most worthy spots on this list. Oh my gosh, this is like everything that you could ever want from a movie like this. The comedy is just pure gold in this movie. Edgar Wright's visual comedy in this movie especially is just perfect. The action is super fun, the characters are likable, and they're given a surprising amount of depth, which is why I love this movie as much as I do. Yeah, it is a super entertaining movie, but when you really dig deeper than the surface, you really see these characters for who they are. You really get to understand where these characters are coming from and why they're interacting the way they do. It's just a really great movie on every level. Edgar Wright, you're a genius.
Number 1.
Once again, if you know me, you knew this was coming. You knew this was going to be my number 1 film of the decade. But I love Whiplash too much. There's no way that I couldn't put this at number 1. This is honestly and genuinely just one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's one of the best movies that I think has ever been made. Damien Chazelle's writing and directing is just perfect for this movie. The performances are just some of the best I've ever seen. J.K. Simmons especially, one of the most deserving Oscars ever given. The cinematography, the editing, it just flows so naturally, and it just creates this amazing story, this amazing experience about someone who's just passionate about what they love and is willing to do anything to get better at what they love. And on top of that, me being a drummer and a musician just kind of makes it all even better. And there you have it. Those are my 10 favorite movies of the decade. That was a really hard list to put together. I mean, to be real, there's probably 30 or 40 different movies that could have been a contender for this list. But like I said, these are just the ones that have hit me the hardest. These are the ones that I've rewatched the most. These are just the ones, looking back on it, that I love the most. So what are your favorite movies of the decade? Put them in the comments down below. I would love to see what your favorite movies of the decade are. There are so many movies that I actually didn't get to see that came out this decade that I really want to be, that could have possibly been on this list. So put them down below what your favorites were. I would love to check them out if I haven't seen them, and they're probably on my list if I haven't. Be sure to stay tuned for my top 10 most anticipated movies of 2020 coming tomorrow, and be sure to stay tuned for more reviews coming very soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.